7 years ago, I got married to my husband. His sister already had kids back then. But right from the start, I felt like I wasn't really part of their family. My sister-in-law made it clear that I wasn't their aunt. She even told her kids that I wasn't their aunt. Because of this, I don't feel close to them like I do with my husband's other siblings' kids, who I treat like my own nieces and nephews. I love spending time with them and being a fun aunt. I've done things like painting their rooms and taking them on trips because I like being creative and making them happy. Even though I'm a mom now, I still love doing these things for my nieces and nephews because they're like my family, and I never really had one before. But when it comes to my sister-in-law's kids, I don't do any of that anymore. I've stopped trying to talk to them because my sister-in-law made it clear that she doesn't want me involved. I don't want to cause any drama or trouble by interacting with them since it seems like she doesn't want us to connect. Now, our kids feel jealous and left out because their cousins have cool stuff in their rooms and get to do fun things, while they don't. When my sister-in-law confronted me about it, she blamed me for making her kids feel that way. I told her it was her fault for creating a situation where I couldn't relate to her kids, and now they're the ones suffering because of it. I reminded her that she's reaping what she sowed, and her kids are the ones paying the price for it. Now she's all fired up, saying this and that. It's clear she's not happy, and honestly, I never wanted my kids to see her as their aunt anyway. The rest of the family just shakes their heads at her antics, but I know this tension isn't helping anyone. I do feel bad for her kids though. I can't help but wonder if I've made things worse. She doesn't see me as family to her kids because we're not related by blood or adoption. I don't think I'm in the wrong here, and it's frustrating to see the family dismiss her behavior. If anyone confronted me about it, I'd explain that I've always respected her role as a parent, even when she asked me to step back from being an aunt years ago. It hurt, but I understood and never crossed any boundaries. It's unfortunate that things turned out this way, but I had to respect her wishes. I didn't set these boundaries, I just followed them. When she complained to OP could have responded, "Do I know you?" But I wonder if the sister-in-law was the only daughter among the siblings. Maybe NOP being the first woman to marry into the family triggered her. Over time, as the other brothers got married and had kids, she became less aggressive, but the damage was done. The only reason the sister-in-law regrets it now is because OP turned out to be a fantastic aunt to other children, and the sister-in-law's plan backfired. Actions have consequences. OP, you followed her instructions not to get involved. It seems like the rest of the family knows she's difficult too. Everyone here seems to have their faults. You probably aren't telling the whole story about what's going on between you and your sister-in-law. But it's not fair for either of you to involve the kids. And what about your husband? Does he also ignore his niece and nephew? Why is he supporting either of you acting this way? I couldn't disagree more. The sister-in-law made the choice to exclude OP and is now causing conflict because OP respected the boundary she set around her kids. Are you suggesting OP should have ignored that boundary? I understand your concern for her kids. Sadly, they suffer because of their mom's actions. But before you try to change anything, consider how your sister-in-law will react. She might turn any contact into something negative. Keep that in mind as you decide what to do next. This situation happened 2 months ago, but he's still upset about it. I'm a 45-year-old woman. I love my oldest son, but he's almost an adult and acts like one. In our family, everyone takes turns doing chores like cooking, washing dishes, and cleaning common areas on different days. Unfortunately, my son dislikes chores and always tries to avoid them. It's been an ongoing struggle. Washing dishes is particularly troublesome. He fills the dishwasher too much, preventing the detergent from reaching the dishes, leading to them not getting clean. I interrupted him quickly and reminded him that the dishwasher sanitizes dishes. My husband supported me, saying, if he wants dinner, he'll eat from his dishes. He often promised to wash some, but I refused, reminding him that he had the chance to clean them properly the night before. I told him to eat from them as they were or skip dinner. He yelled and threatened to make his own food, but I stood firm. Eventually he gave in, reluctantly selecting the least dirty dishes and eating quietly. I felt bad seeing him so disgusted, but I was tired of the wasted time, water, and detergent. It turned out well. His dishes came out perfectly clean afterward. However, he's still angry, and I do feel guilty now. But I'm tired of his deliberate laziness causing problems for everyone else in the house. Am I wrong? You're not wrong, and I think you handled the situation well. However, I disagree with your statement that he doesn't realize his laziness screws over everyone else in the house. He knows, he just doesn't care. He's old enough to understand the consequences of his actions, and it's time he learns. This should have been addressed sooner. If he doesn't face consequences, he won't change his behavior. Instead, he learned that even when I make a mistake, my parents will have to fix it because they need to eat too. What OP did was smart because he's almost an adult, and it's time to learn how to do things properly. The fact that he suddenly knew how to do the dishes correctly overnight shows that he was capable all along but chose not to do them properly. Well done, OP. I grew up in poverty but worked harder than anyone else to achieve success in my personal, financial, and professional life. My family often had to choose between bus fare and a meal. So when I became financially successful, many people approached me for help. I helped them out of compassion and understanding, knowing how much a small gesture can mean to someone in need. However, many of those I helped started to see me as their personal ATM. I never faced this issue with people who were already financially stable. They would have been embarrassed to ask. While I don't spoil my kids, we do live comfortably in a nice house in a good neighborhood, and I expect them to work hard and excel in school. My eldest son, a teenager, got into trouble for telling a peer that he didn't want to be friends because of his financial situation. A teacher overheard and reacted strongly. Unlike that teacher, I took the time to understand the context and facts before responding. My son then began spending time with Austin. Austin would often lament about not having money to participate in activities, so my son would sometimes cover for him. Like when they went to see Top Gun and Austin couldn't afford a ticket, my son paid for him. However, things got uncomfortable when Austin began to expect my son to foot the bill regularly. The tipping point came when they went to IHOP with friends, and Austin assumed my son would pay for his meal too. While my son only ordered onion rings, Austin indulged in a full meal, dessert, and milkshake. Later, my son vented to their friends about how little money he receives from me, and yet he still has to work as a tutor, only for Austin to take advantage of his generosity. Consequently, their friends distanced themselves from Austin. A few weeks later, in class, Austin wondered why he wasn't being invited to hang out anymore. My son replied, because he's tired of covering for him. Austin responded, but I'm poor. My son sarcastically remarked, oh, so you're too poor to be friends with? Maybe I should quit school and get a job like him. This exchange prompted a call from the teacher. I clarified the context of the conversation to the teacher, as she wasn't receptive when my son tried to explain it. She labeled my son as mean and threatened detention. I informed her that I would advise my son not to serve detention for this incident and asked her what she planned to do about it. She ultimately dropped the matter. Edit. It's important to note that Austin isn't in extreme poverty. He has access to resources like last year's iPhone. He has the ability to work like other kids at their school, but chooses not to. You're not in the wrong here. Consider discussing with the head teacher the emotional toll on your son, who has been coerced into giving money repeatedly, and how the last incident bordered on theft. Your son deserves support in standing up to emotional manipulation and bullying, and he has the right to end the friendship. The teacher should have heard the whole story before jumping to conclusions. Everyone involved made mistakes here. While your son's outburst might warrant detention, it's not ideal for you to interfere with the teacher's disciplinary actions unless there's a significant issue with her approach. It might be beneficial to help your son improve how he expresses himself to avoid more serious consequences in the future. I agree, your son has the right to stand up for himself. But the way he expressed it could have been kinder. A more effective approach would have been to say something like, I don't want to be friends with someone who takes advantage of me, which addresses the real issue without targeting Austin's financial situation. Being overly confrontational with someone who feels entitled might lead to further trouble. Given the circumstances, your son's response wasn't entirely unreasonable. It was a sarcastic retort to someone making excuses for their behavior. The teacher's refusal to listen to the full story and her decision to focus on a poorly worded phrase taken out of context didn't help the situation. I know it might sound odd, but I don't think I'm in the wrong here. I just need some other perspectives on this. My brother, who dropped out of high school, recently got married to his wife, who has similar qualifications, at the young age of 19. I'm 23, just to give some context. The situation is complicated. But basically, my brother's mother-in-law pushed them into getting married because she wanted a grandchild as soon as possible. Unfortunately, my own mother went along with it, which I find frustrating. Now my new sister-in-law is expecting, which confirms my suspicions. I know I might seem disrespectful, but I'm not happy about it. We're not well off financially. My dad, who used to be assertive, didn't step in to prevent this situation. Ironically, he persuaded me against attending the college I wanted because of the high tuition fees. To cover the wedding costs, my dad borrowed money from my uncle, his brother, and now he's pressuring me to repay it because my brother and sister-in-law, being young and expecting, can't afford to. They told me they're in too much debt to get a loan from a bank, so it falls on me since I'm debt-free with savings and a job. When they brought this up, I didn't say anything. I just laughed and left. Now they're bombarding me with calls and texts asking for financial help, but I refuse to budge. It feels like we're living in completely different realities. It's not about culture or anything like that. Am I wrong for refusing to take out a loan for my family? Definitely not. Goodness, what a chaotic situation. If no one can afford to cover the wedding costs, what about the baby? It seems like they'll keep turning to you for loans they won't repay. Stand your ground. This isn't your problem to fix, so don't entertain further discussions about it. If they can't afford a lavish wedding without a substantial loan, maybe they should prioritize their resources for the baby instead. Laughing in their faces was a fitting response to such a ridiculous request. Oh, please ensure that you're the only one with access to your savings. Secure your accounts with updated passwords and avoid staying logged into online banking on shared devices. It's important to take these precautions, especially if your parents have access to personal information like your social security number and employment history. While you might believe they wouldn't take advantage of you, financial strain can drive people to make unexpected decisions. That's right. If they have your social security number, they could potentially open credit in your name, leaving you in a difficult situation. It's a quick process, but you can easily lock your credit by contacting the major reporting agencies, usually 3 of them, either by phone or online. Reversing the lock is simple when you're ready to apply for loans for things like a home, education, or a car. Their financial irresponsibility shouldn't fall on your shoulders. They need to figure out a repayment plan for your uncle on their own. Growing up, I lived with my best friend and his wife, Amanda, on I-35. While Amanda has always been a friend, I've had a closer relationship with her husband. Unfortunately, they moved out of town years ago, only returning for significant family events like funerals or weddings. A few months back, Amanda visited for her sister-in-law's bachelorette party, despite feeling uneasy about it due to her sister-in-law's mistreatment stemming from jealousy or other issues. Wanting to ease her nerves, I offered to pick her up from the airport and take her out for drinks afterward. However, I made a mistake and forgot to add it to my calendar. I had already planned a date for that night and couldn't cancel it, so I arranged for the sister-in-law's best friend to pick up Amanda and take her to the hotel. 2 days later, I met up with Amanda for drinks. She was feeling really down after her mistreatment at the bachelorette party, where everyone else seemed to ignore her. We spent a few hours chatting and drinking, and then I received a text from my girlfriend, asking me to come over to her apartment. I arranged for a mutual friend to join Amanda at the bar and keep her company before leaving. After that night, Amanda stopped communicating with me. She ignored my texts and social media messages for 3 months. Finally, I decided to ask my best friend about what was going on with his wife. He listed a series of complaints Amanda had against me, including forgetting her birthday multiple times despite Facebook reminders, which she doesn't use, and the incident at the bar where I forgot to pick her up from the airport and left her alone. I explained to my friend that I tend to be absent-minded, and they should have been aware of that by now. I also mentioned that Amanda is overly sensitive and holds onto grudges. I reminded him that I had already apologized to her for everything, so I didn't understand why she was still upset. However, my best friend became angry and is now not speaking to me either. Do you think I'm the one in the wrong here? My name is Emily, and at 43 years old, I find myself navigating life's twists and turns alone. 2 years ago, my husband John, who was my age, was taken by a sudden heart attack. His absence left a void that seemed insurmountable. We had hoped for children, but fate had different plans, leaving us in a silent ache of unfulfilled dreams. Guilt often washed over me, knowing John's deep longing for fatherhood. Yet in his wisdom, he reassured me, Our happiness doesn't depend on children. It's in cherishing each other, just the two of us. We held onto those words tightly, crafting moments of joy amidst our shared sorrow. But life's capriciousness had another chapter in store for me. In a cruel twist, just as we found solace in each other's company, I found myself grappling with the stark loneliness of his absence. In this unforgiving reality, circumstances led me to reside alone under the same roof as my late husband's mother, a woman with whom I frequently found myself at odds. Our living arrangement became the result of John's parents' divorce, with his father now a presence in our shared dwelling, a two-family abode offering the only solace in an otherwise strained situation. Yet, as time passed, my mother-in-law's visits grew more frequent, perhaps driven by a longing for her departed son. I couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Her demeanor was often overbearing, punctuated by subtle jabs. "What exactly do you mean by that?" I would inquire, bracing for the inevitable sting of her words. "It's because he ended up with someone like you that John's no longer with us. You bear some responsibility," she would assert, her accusations as sharp as ever. Her reproaches were nothing new, but each time they cut deeper. "Are you seriously suggesting that I'm to blame?" I challenged, grappling with the weight of her accusations. "Perhaps he fell ill because you couldn't manage his diet properly. I suspect your cooking was too rich. His weight gain after marriage speaks volumes," my mother-in-law asserted, her words like barbs aimed directly at my heart. While it was true that John had put on weight since our wedding day, he always praised my cooking and savored each meal with genuine delight. His kindness knew no bounds. Even if the food had been supper, he'd have eaten it without complaint. "If only you had been more vigilant about his health, this tragedy could have been avoided," she continued, her tone heavy with accusation. These words, delivered by my mother-in-law in the somber days before John's funeral 2 years ago, struck me like a thunderbolt. Blaming me for John's illness and passing was a cruel twist of fate, one that left me reeling with pain. Though I knew the accusations were unfounded, the constant repetition took a toll on my psyche, making an already difficult time merely unbearable. For my mother-in-law, Joe must have been the center of her universe. The abrupt and untimely loss of her beloved son must have been excruciating. I could empathize with her struggle to contain her emotions. However, her attacks on me intensified with each passing day, a development I had sadly anticipated. "Because of you, my precious son is gone. Were you plotting to inherit his insurance money all along?" she accused, her words cutting like daggers. How many times must I deny such baseless accusations? "It's simply not true," I retorted, trying to maintain my composure. "You deliberately avoided having children just to claim his insurance money, didn't you? You're a devious woman," she spat venomously. As a couple, we longed for children and pursued every avenue, including medical assistance. But despite our efforts, we were unable to conceive. "The notion of profiting from insurance is ludicrous," I explained, my patience wearing thin. "Do you honestly believe I would fall for such a charade?" she scoffed, her disbelief palpable. "Each day without John is a torment for me. I can't pretend to be anything other than what I am," I replied, my voice tinged with sorrow. "Why do you utter such cruelty? It would have been better if you had never been part of our lives. Why did Joe have to endure this? Your words are unbearable. I can't bear the thought of never seeing my son again," she lamented, her anguish pouring out in waves. "What would John think if he heard you now? Pointing fingers won't bring him back. Joe was a remarkable and hardworking son. His loss is incomprehensible. It would have been easier if you were here. There's a line you don't cross. Some things are better left unsaid." Oh, I'm just talking to myself, voicing thoughts that have been haunting me. "It's nothing you need to concern yourself with. What's your ultimate point? Leave? And why should I leave? Your presence is suffocating. I won't demand it today, but please vacate this house at the earliest. Since John's passing, ownership rightfully belongs to me." "After John's passing, you've probably got your eye on the insurance money and the house, haven't you?" she accused, her tone heavy with suspicion. "You're making wild assumptions. I wasn't even aware of any insurance payout until after he passed." I defended myself, feeling the weight of her distrust bearing down on me. Her discovery of the insurance payout seemed to fuel her suspicions, as if she believed I had orchestrated John's death to secure the house and money. No matter how hard I tried to reason with her, she remained steadfast in her mistrust. I felt like I was reaching my breaking point. Living under the same roof was becoming unbearable. each day more mentally draining than the last. The next day, the tension boiled over. You must be living the high life now. No need to worry about work with all that insurance money rolling in. Is that why you're here, to rub it in? She sneered, her words laced with bitterness. It's not fair to twist my words like that. I can't take these constant jabs. I understand you're grieving for John, but it's not right to lash out at me. I miss him just as much and feel the ache of his absence every day, I replied, trying to maintain my composure amidst the storm of accusations. Seriously, spare me the act. You've got it made with the house and money, don't you? Playing the devoted wife role, I see, she sneered, her tone dripping with sarcasm. I won't entertain such accusations. We face our own struggles, particularly with not having children, but I loved John deeply and envisioned a future filled with cherished moments together, I countered, trying to hold onto my dignity amidst her onslaught. It's astounding how you can speak so freely with everything falling into place for you. Must be nice having life handed to you on a silver platter, she retorted, her words cutting deep. That's a heartless thing to say. If I could trade the money and the house just to have John back, I'd do it without a second thought, I confess, my voice tinged with sorrow. Ah, so you're implying you don't need the insurance money then? She pressed, a hint of skepticism in her tone. Why would you even suggest such a thing? Just because I don't need it doesn't mean I'll refuse it. This money represents John's last gesture of love and concern for my future without him. I intend to honor that sentiment, I replied firmly, determined not to let her diminish the significance of John's final gift to me. You have no shame, she spat, her disdain evident in her tone. Feeling the strain of our cohabitation weighing heavily upon us both, I summoned the courage to broach a topic that had been weighing on my mind. Can we put an end to this arrangement? I proposed, hoping for a resolution to our ongoing conflict. What do you mean? She inquired, her tone wary. We argue every day, and it's taking a toll on both of us. I believe it's in our best interest to part ways, I explained, bracing myself for her response. That sounds like the most sensible option. Please make arrangements to vacate the premises soon, she replied, her words tinged with finality. It's you who should be leaving. This house belongs to me, I countered, feeling a surge of indignation. I can't believe you're trying to evict me. You're even more heartless than I thought. The house is too large for me alone. I'm contemplating selling it and settling elsewhere. Besides, properties in this area fetch a good price, I declared, determined to assert my own interests in the face of her hostility. Seems like every conversation with you circles back to money. How much is enough for you? If you're considering selling, why not just hand the house over to me? It'll be too much for you to manage alone, and the expenses, like property taxes, could become overwhelming. I could help you find a more suitable living situation, like an apartment. Are you suggesting I pay rent to stay in my own home? If selling is your plan, then consider handing it over to me. Renting an apartment would likely be more economical than maintaining this entire house. I can't commit to monthly rent payments, but I'm willing to contribute towards it. If that's the arrangement, so be it. I'm relieved to finally break free from living under the same roof with you. I always feared it would come to this. Just promise me you'll provide financial support. Agreed. Let's start the search for an apartment soon. So, we made the decision to go our separate ways. Despite our complicated relationship, my mother-in-law is the mother of my late husband, John. I feel a duty to support her, especially considering her financial struggles. With this in mind, I began the search for a suitable apartment for her. I feel like I've let you down. The diagnosis was a cerebral hemorrhage, but thankfully, it wasn't life-threatening. I spent 2 months in the hospital, including my recovery time. Throughout my stay, my mother-in-law never once came to visit. It was my parents and sister who took turns caring for me. Their unwavering support allowed me to regain almost normalcy in my daily life, with only minor lingering symptoms. And before I knew it, my 2-month hospital stay had passed, and the day of my discharge had arrived. I had initially planned to temporarily stay at my parents' place, but upon returning home to gather my belongings, I was greeted by a startling sight. What? Where's the house? What happened? I exclaimed, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. My mother-in-law appeared as though she had been expecting me. Congratulations on being discharged. I didn't expect you to look so well. It seems there are minimal lingering effects, and I can resume my usual routine. I'm relieved to hear that you're doing better. But what happened to the house while I was in the hospital? I inquired, my mind reeling with questions. Well, You see, I sold it for around $150,000, she replied matter-of-factly. What do you mean you sold it without consulting me? I demanded, incredulous. I had a friend who was eager to live in this area. Her husband works nearby, and they needed a place urgently, so I went ahead and sold it, she explained casually. Selling it without even informing me is completely unacceptable, I protested, feeling a surge of anger. It's not that big of a deal. I received an offer right after you were hospitalized. I figured even if you recovered, you might struggle to live independently and could end up in a care facility, so I made the decision on my own. Don't be upset, she said, trying to justify her actions. I can't believe this. Thanks to me finding a buyer, we got $150,000 from selling the house, she added, as though it were a positive outcome. I can't believe it. While I was in the hospital, my mother-in-law sold the house without consulting me. Apparently, their acquaintance had always coveted the land surrounding my house, and my mother-in-law took it upon herself to arrange a private sale, I recounted, feeling a mix of shock and betrayal. Are you seriously considering selling someone's house without their consent and pocketing the proceeds? I questioned, appalled by her audacity. But the house was originally in John's name, wasn't it? She countered, attempting to justify her actions. While that may be true, I fail to see how that concerns you, I replied, growing increasingly frustrated. Anything that belonged to my son John is rightfully mine, she asserted, her tone unyielding. You seem to conveniently interpret things in your favor, but that's not how ownership works, I retorted, feeling exasperated. What exactly are you implying? She challenged. When John passed away, the title of the house transferred to my name, I explained, hoping to clarify the situation. And what's your point? She asked, seemingly unfazed. Selling a house without the owner's consent is bordering on criminal behavior, I stated firmly, unable to hide my disbelief. Please refrain from calling me a criminal, she snapped defensively. Who would have thought you'd consider life as usual after hearing about the cerebral hemorrhage? That doesn't give you the right to sell it, I argued, struggling to contain my frustration. Why the hostile expression? Do you honestly believe you'd win in court? How about we split it 50-50? That way, we each get $75,000, she suggested nonchalantly. It's not about the money, I snapped, feeling my anger rising. Then why are you so upset? While I was hospitalized, she single-handedly sold her house and used the proceeds to purchase a condo for herself. Strangely enough, there was a condo neighboring our old house for sale at around $75,000, and she's currently residing there. To top it off, she relocated my belongings to her new place. It seems that during those 2 months of my hospitalization, she doubted the severity of my condition and took it upon herself to make significant decisions. It was time to confront the self-centered woman with the truth. The house is no longer in my name, I revealed, my voice tinged with resignation. What do you mean? I demanded, struggling to comprehend her actions. I started the process of selling the house while I was in the hospital, she confessed. And what of it? I pressed, my frustration mounting. Due to its prime location, the sale was swiftly arranged. I was meant to handle the paperwork post-discharge, but it's already been finalized, so there's no turning back, she explained matter-of-factly. You must cancel it immediately, I insisted, feeling the surge of urgency. It's my property, so I see no reason to cancel, she countered, her tone firm. You need to explain the situation to your acquaintance and return the $150,000. I urged, hoping she would see reason. What are you suggesting? I've already purchased a condo, she revealed, her response leaving me speechless. So you're only willing to return half of it? I asked, feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief. Then you'll need to sell the apartment you're currently residing in to repay the remaining sum, won't you? I pressed, determined to find a solution. My clients are also considering demolishing the house, so it's convenient for them. I need to proceed with the necessary procedures, so please arrange for the refund promptly, she insisted, her tone resolute. Wait a minute. We're not finished discussing this, I interjected, feeling a sense of urgency. I'm considering returning to my parents' home, so I'd appreciate it if you could arrange to have my belongings sent there, I requested, hoping for some semblance of cooperation. Wait, I have a feeling today will be the last time we see each other. Please take care, she said, her words tinged with finality, leaving me with a sense of resignation. After that incident, I severed all ties with her. Later, I heard she apologized to the acquaintance she had sold the house to without my consent and reimbursed them. The total expenses, including demolition and inconvenience fees, amounted to roughly $170,000. Additionally, despite selling her apartment, its value had decreased since her purchase, leaving her with substantial debt. On the other hand, thanks to her actions, I saved on demolition costs and made a significant profit from selling my house. A new home was constructed on the land where John and I had once lived. Seeing the new house brought back memories of the happy times we shared, evoking both nostalgia and sadness. Despite my reservations, I decided to visit the site. To my surprise, someone I never wished to see again appeared. "Well, it's been some time, hasn't it?" she greeted me. "Why are you here, mother-in-law?" I asked, taken aback by her unexpected presence. "I'm heading to work," she replied casually. "You're going to work now?" I questioned, surprised by her response. "Yes," she affirmed. "So you've started working?" I inquired, puzzled by this newfound revelation. "I'm drowning in debt because of you," I accused. "How can you say that? I'm not responsible for your financial troubles," she retorted defensively. "What happened to the assistance you promised with my apartment?" I pressed. "Our relationship has ended, so any previous agreements are null and void," she replied coldly. "John would be devastated by all of this. I would tell him the same," I stated, my voice tinged with sadness. "What do you mean?" she inquired, her tone softening slightly. "John always prioritized me and treated me with kindness. He was considerate, wasn't he?" I reminisced. "What's your point?" she asked, sensing where the conversation was heading. "You used to blame me every day, saying that John's death was my fault," I reminded her. "And it's the truth. How do you think John would feel if he knew?" She fired back. "Mother-in-law, if it weren't for John, you would be in a much worse situation," I pointed out. "Are you still going to insist on that? Will it change anything?" she challenged, her tone bitter with resentment. "I have no interest in being lectured by you. With all the money you now have, you should take on some of the debt burden. After all, we're still family, aren't we?" she retorted, her tone tinged with bitterness. "I never truly cared for you, but I intended to support you because you're John's beloved mother," I confessed. "Well, that's the least you can do," she replied, her voice laced with expectation. "However, I can't overlook some of the hurtful things you've said and done since my stroke. I can't simply forget the pain caused by your words," I admitted, feeling the weight of unresolved grievances. "That was months ago. It's time to let go of grudges," she insisted, brushing off my concerns. "It's not easy for the person who was wounded by those words to simply move on," I countered, my frustration mounting. "You're quite stubborn, aren't you? Call it what you want," she dismissed, showing no remorse. "I'm no longer involved. By the way, shouldn't you be at work by now?" I redirected the conversation, eager to end the confrontation. "Ah, look at the time. Take care on your way," she responded, avoiding the topic. "If it weren't for you, I'd be enjoying a peaceful retirement," I remarked bitterly. "It sounds like you regret your decisions. Instead of blaming others, perhaps it's time to reflect on your own actions," she suggested, deflecting any responsibility. After expressing my thoughts to her, I walked away from the confrontation. I recounted. "It's only been 2 years since John passed away. Thanks to the financial security he left behind, I've been able to build a stable life. His legacy means everything to me, and I'm determined to honor it wisely. I've invested in an apartment close to my parents' home where I now reside alone. Though I long for John's presence, I take solace in the belief that he watches over me from above. My aim is to lead a long, fulfilling life, cherishing the memories we shared and living for both of us. My ultimate dream is to one day reunite with him in heaven, where we can relive our cherished moments together. I've longed for children, but you're the reason we couldn't have them," my husband spat out, hurling those hurtful words at me after 20 years of marriage. In that moment, I realized I couldn't continue with him. His callousness cut deep and his mind was elsewhere, dreaming of a new life without me. It felt as if some divine eye had witnessed his cruelty. My name is Lisa, 45 years old, a secretary at a law firm. Our marriage, nearing 2 decades, had been modest and childless. Despite our shared desire for children, infertility plagued us, primarily my own struggles. I underwent treatments, exhausting myself physically, emotionally, and financially, only to face disappointment. When I turned 40, we conceded defeat. My husband's desire for children persisted, but I couldn't endure the pain and financial strain any longer. We decided to halt treatments and embrace a childless life, opting for luxury trips instead. Yet the pang of regret lingered, especially when confronted with images of children on TV or greeting cards. Even 5 years post-treatments, guilt and remorse gnawed at me. Then, a school reunion beckoned after a decade. My husband encouraged me to take a break, sensing it as a mini vacation. It felt like a temporary escape from the weight of our childless existence. I realized I had scarcely been out alone since our wedding day, my life consumed by infertility treatments. But a little indulgence now and then couldn't hurt, right? At the venue, catching up with old friends felt refreshing. "Lisa, long time no see. You look great, slimmer than before," one friend remarked. Indeed, I had shed about 22 pounds over the past decade. "Thanks," I replied with a smile. "I envy you. Since marriage and kids, I've gained almost 33 pounds, she lamented. Her words, though innocent, stung a bit. "Any kids for you?" another friend asked. "No, we couldn't," I replied, feeling the weight of the question. "Just the two of us." "Oh, sorry for asking such an awkward question," she apologized. "No worries. Let's just enjoy ourselves," I reassured, trying to maintain a lively atmosphere. As conversation flowed, a startling revelation emerged. My son was nearly caught in a marriage scam recently, one classmate shared. I was taken aback. A scam? Yes, they asked him for $20,000 for their wedding, but it fell through, she explained. "What happened next?" I inquired, intrigued. "He couldn't afford it, so he came to us for advice. That's when we uncovered the scam. The woman vanished," she recounted. "It's terrifying," I murmured, shaken by the story. "There are some awful people out there," another friend chimed in. "Really scary." "A marriage scam," I mused, shocked that such deceit could occur so close to home. Thankfully, her son had moved on with a new girlfriend, and the parents seemed relieved. The reunion continued smoothly, eventually winding down. Instead of heading to the after party, I decided to head home, reflecting on the evening's unexpected revelations. I returned to my hotel, savoring a nightcap alone. It struck me, I hadn't checked in with my husband. It was only 10 p.m. He should still be awake. Despite repeated calls, he didn't answer. Perhaps he already turned in. Well, I'd be back tomorrow, so it wasn't a pressing concern. Yet an uneasy feeling gnawed at me. Was it women's intuition? Something felt off. From then on, my husband started arriving home unusually late on weekdays, often inebriated. "Hey, I'm home," he slurred one night, collapsing onto the living room floor. "Are you okay?" I asked, concern creeping into my voice. "Shut up, I'm home. Show some respect," he retorted, his words clouded by alcohol. As I tidied up his discarded clothes, he muttered something about Alyssa. You know, if he were as young as Alyssa. Confusion gripped me. Who was Alyssa? What did he mean by his words? Before I could inquire further, he was already asleep. Could he be cheating on me? The unease I felt that day morphed into a creeping certainty. But no, my husband was a good man. It must be drunken nonsense. Yet doubts lingered, unsettling my thoughts. I tried to reassure myself, but my husband's erratic behavior gnawed at me. Weekends meant early departures and late returns, often accompanied by the stench of alcohol. It had become a pattern I could no longer ignore. "You're going out drinking almost every day lately. Are we okay?" I ventured one evening. "Mind your own business. It's my money," he snapped back, dismissive of my concern. "But we need to save for our future," I insisted. His response cut deep. "Well, I've spent quite a bit on treatments." "That's because you're defective." Even in his inebriated state, his words stung. I could have fathomed he'd speak to me that way. As time passed, his disparaging remarks grew more frequent. "Since you can't have kids, you should focus on showing affection to me," he'd say. With each selfish act, my love for him waned. Gone was the caring husband who once supported me through treatments. Would he ever return? After 20 years, I began questioning the essence of our marriage. But before I could confront him about it, he dropped a bombshell. "We need to talk," he said, his demeanor serious. I returned from work to find him on the sofa, his expression grave. "What's wrong? Why are you being so formal?" I asked, sensing something was amiss. "I want a divorce," he declared bluntly. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. You're joking, right? Why would you say that all of a sudden? I pleaded, hoping for reassurance. But the idea of divorce had never crossed his mind before. Yes, he confirmed, leaving me stunned and bewildered. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. Divorce? Had my husband been considering it all along? I confronted him, desperate for clarity. Out of the blue, you want a divorce? What's going on? I demanded, my emotions raw. We've been together for 20 years, haven't we? Let's talk this through, I urged, hoping for understanding. But he met my plea with contempt. You're clueless, aren't you? He scoffed, his tone laced with bitterness. Confusion clouded my mind. What do you mean? For 20 years I've wanted children, but because of you I've been denied that chance, he accused, his words cutting deep. His revelation blindsided me. That's not fair. We decided together to stop treatments, I countered, feeling the weight of sadness and frustration. I was never okay with that. I've always wanted a child, he confessed, his voice heavy with regret. Tears threatened to spill as the reality sank in. Well, if you sign the divorce papers, I won't have anything else to say, he declared proudly, pushing the papers toward me. But his next words struck like lightning. I've already decided to remarry. Remarry? With a 20-year-old? I gasped, disbelief coursing through me. That's right. Alyssa, he confirmed, a smug satisfaction in his tone. Alyssa, the name echoed in my mind, the same name he had mentioned before. Woman's intuition, it seemed, was not to be underestimated. I felt a flicker of self-satisfaction, but I knew it wasn't the time for indulgence. Then my husband showed me a picture of his so-called adorable Alyssa. As I examined it closely, I struggled to contain my laughter. Surely, this had to be a joke. How could something like this be real? I prayed he didn't notice my odd reaction and swiftly composed myself. So, you really want a child that badly? I questioned, masking my incredulity. Yes, because you can't give birth. There's nothing we can do about that, right? You'll agree to the divorce, won't you? He pressed, oblivious to my internal turmoil. I suppose there's no choice, I replied, feigning distress, though secretly his sheer idiocy made the decision easier. With each passing moment, the thought of divorcing him grew more appealing. It felt like divine intervention guiding me toward the right path. With a heavy heart, or so I pretended, I signed the divorce papers and left him behind. I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. Surely, he would regret his actions soon enough. Time would tell. Fast forward a year after the divorce, and I encountered him on my way home from work. His appearance shocked me. Lisa, please help me, he pleaded, his shabby appearance a stark contrast to the man I once knew. Excuse me, who are you? I asked, genuinely not recognizing him. It's me, Lisa. I need your help, he insisted, desperation evident in his voice. I hesitated, taken aback by his transformation. Long time no see, I finally managed, unsure of how to react. In that moment, I realized the tables had turned. It was now his turn to seek assistance, and I held all the cards. Please introduce me to your company's lawyer, he implored, his request a humbling reminder of his downfall. I couldn't just agree to help out of the blue. It seemed my ex-husband was facing financial troubles. I had sensed it from his appearance, but I never imagined he would change so drastically within a year. If it's your first consultation, it's free. But to hire them, you'll have to pay their fee, I explained, trying to navigate the situation. I don't have that kind of money. Please help me, he pleaded, desperation evident in his voice. Perplexed by his sudden predicament, I decided to hear him out. We found ourselves in a nearby cafe, where he began to share his story. Well, actually, he started, but before he could finish, I interjected. Did that girl Alyssa run off? I asked, a sudden realization dawning on me. How did you know? He responded, surprise evident in his voice. Just as I suspected. When you showed me a picture of a girl named Alyssa, it clicked. She looked exactly like the one who killed a classmate's son at a reunion, I explained, recalling the warning given by the classmate about a woman named Sally, approximately 22 years old. Her age and name are probably fake, of course. The swindler wouldn't use her real name, I added, connecting the dots. Of course you knew about Alyssa, didn't you? He questioned, realization settling in. Well, I guess you could say I knew. But what happened? I inquired, eager to unravel the full story. When I pressed my husband for an explanation, this was the story he offered. About a year ago, he met a woman named Alyssa at a nightclub. My husband, who had always harbored a desire for children, seemed to have shared his thoughts with her. It was during one of these conversations that Alyssa made an astonishing offer. She could bear a child for him. Their relationship blossomed from there. He started frequenting the club almost every weekday and spent weekends with Alyssa outside its confines. In the process, he depleted $10,000 from his savings, accumulated during his single days. Despite this, Alyssa never demanded lavish gifts or expensive outings. She was content just to share a drink with him at the club. She was different, he insisted. Not like the stereotypical club girls you often hear about. She didn't care about designer goods or jewelry. She was happy as long as I was there with her. He painted Alyssa as hardworking and sincere, emphasizing their agreement not to touch each other's savings from their single days. I thought it was his money and he could use it as he pleased, I admitted, unaware of his extravagant spending. Then my husband revealed the twist in the tale. Alyssa's true colors had emerged. I wanted to get married, but I had debts totaling about $20,000. Then my husband promised to take on Alyssa's debt and transferred the money to her, I recounted, my voice heavy with regret. They moved in together right after our divorce, but Alyssa continued her nighttime work and rarely came home. Eventually, she quit her job at the club and disappeared, taking all the money with her. How could he be so foolish? I lamented, feeling a sense of despair at having been married to such a man for 20 years. Did you make a promissory note? I inquired, hoping for some semblance of responsibility. A what? My husband looked puzzled. You lent her money, didn't you? Didn't you get a note? I pressed, frustration creeping into my tone. We were going to be a couple, so I didn't do such a thing, he admitted. So, you basically gave her the money, is that it? I asked incredulously. In this case, it seems like you donated $20,000 to Alyssa out of goodwill, I concluded, my disappointment palpable. This woman must be a pro, I mused, realizing the extent of her deception. In the case of donations, if the amount exceeds $11,000 in a year, gift tax is imposed. Depending on the case, the receiver might be taxed. So, Alyssa just took $20,000 in cash and vanished, splitting the money into two parts across 2 different years to avoid taxes. The reason my husband thought she was a good girl who never asked for material gifts was because she knew the law well. So, what should I do? I asked, feeling overwhelmed. I don't know. Maybe consult a lawyer. It'll cost you though, he replied, his shoulders slumping in defeat. All my savings from my single days are gone, and the woman I loved ran away from me. I can't go back on my word to the company about remarrying after boasting about getting a younger wife. Isn't that his own doing? I thought, feeling the weight of my husband's pitiful situation. Lisa, it's my fault. Please come back to me, he pleaded. I realized after you were gone, you were the only one who cared about me. I don't need kids anymore. I'll let you do as you like. You must have been lonely too, right? But his misunderstanding persisted. That matter had ended half a year ago in my mind, so I confronted him with reality. You know, it's been a year. What's with this sudden change of heart? Isn't it a little too late now? Lisa, are you going to abandon me? Well, it was you who pushed for our divorce in the first place, remember? I reminded him. You're the only one I can rely on. My ex-husband looked utterly exhausted, and I decided to show him a little mercy. All right then, shall I call up a lawyer friend of mine? Lisa, thank you. I knew I could count on you, he said, tears welling up in his eyes. Mr. Johnson, the lawyer for my company, arrived at the coffee shop. John, over here, I called out, and my ex-husband seemed somewhat perplexed by our overly familiar demeanor. You see, we've been dating for the past 6 months now, I explained. What was it you needed advice on? As I finished speaking, my ex-husband looked as if he was in a daze. No, well, I think that'll be it for today, he muttered, suddenly snapping back to reality and hurriedly leaving the coffee shop. In the end, he couldn't afford to hire a lawyer and resigned himself to his fate. Rumor had it that his company was abuzz with talk of his unfortunate situation, left by his soon-to-be wife and ignored by his ex-wife. As Mr. Johnson and I spoke later, I confessed the truth about the charade. I'm sorry for involving you in all this, I apologized. No worries, Lisa. I'm glad I could be of help, he reassured me. By the way, do you have any plans after this? Caught off guard by the unexpected turn of events, I was a little flustered, but a fresh start in my mid-40s didn't seem like such a bad beginning. Yes, I'd love to, I agreed, certain that a fun-filled future was awaiting me. I couldn't shake off this feeling of excitement. My name is Tammy, a 39-year-old professional employed in the sales department of a trading company. For my college days, I've been drawn to leadership roles, adept at rallying people together. Presently, I oversee a team of subordinates, rivaling the seasoned male counterparts in sales achievements. I take immense pride in the unwavering support I receive from my female colleagues, bolstering my role as a dependable manager. Yet, returning home to my apartment after a taxing day, I find no one awaiting my arrival. Having parted ways with my husband of 17 years and chosen to live separately from my 15-year-old daughter, I now dwell in a freshly rented apartment, surrounded by yet-to-be unpacked boxes. Despite the chaos, I harbor no regrets. This marks the commencement of a fresh chapter in my life. Let me delve into why I've embarked on this new journey. In the past, I resided in an apartment alongside my husband, Bob, and our daughter, Rebecca. Bob, a former college classmate turned spouse, and I tied the knot after reconnecting post-graduation and dating for 2 years. Initially employed in the sales department of a printing company, Bob transitioned into a self-employed web designer, operating from the comforts of our home. Our daughter, Rebecca, is currently navigating her way through 8th grade. The initial warning came in the form of a shift in Rebecca's demeanor. I asked for the moisturizing cream, Dad. Oh, my bad, sweetie. I completely forgot. I'll pick it up tomorrow after work, I promise. You're so useless. Can't you do anything right? Rebecca began casting colder glances my way, her words growing sharper with each passing day. Initially, I attributed it to her teenage years, dismissing it as a phase. Dad, want to catch a movie with me on your day off? Sure thing, kiddo. What's showing? Previously, Bob would always include me in such plans, but now it seemed he had no reservations about excluding me. Hey, can I have some money? We're going to the movies this weekend, remember? $300 should cover it. $300. Seems a bit steep. Can't you just use your debit card? Just get it done. I'll need cash for shopping and dining out too. Gradually, even Bob's treatment of me soared. Our interactions dwindled, leaving me feeling increasingly isolated. Then came that Sunday, a day etched in memory, when both Bob and Rebecca voiced their dissatisfaction with the breakfast I prepared. What's this? I've told you I want my eggs over easy. Get it right. And this soup is terrible. I've mentioned my dislike for mushrooms countless times, but you still include them. Can't you say something to her, Bob? Why should I? You can't even follow simple instructions. You're the adult here. The chill in their words left me unsettled. Something wasn't right. I needed answers. But by the time I realized it, it was too late. One week, upon discovering Bob's intention to venture out, I resolved to discreetly trail him. Bob's typical routine revolved around his home-based work. There were no scheduled appointments at the barber or the doctor. So why this sudden outing? Suspicion gnawed at me. Regrettably, my suspicions were confirmed. In the cafe awaited a young woman, a woman in her 20s, possessing a striking physique. As they departed the establishment, arm in arm, my head spun, rendering me unable to pursue them. The dreaded day I had long feared had arrived. My apprehension stemmed from a lack of confidence in my own appearance. I always harbored the fear that Bob might stray due to my perceived shortcomings in looks. While Bob exuded undeniable handsomeness, I often questioned why he had chosen me. Subsequently, I enlisted the services of a private investigator to delve into Bob's relationship with the woman. Your husband's paramour is a 26-year-old named Sofia Garcia, employed at a cosmetic surgery clinic. Among the photographic evidence presented by the detective, some were too explicit for me to bear directly. They depicted open displays of affection, hotel entrances, and disturbingly, there were images featuring a certain third party. And here's another. This one shows the three of them, including Rebecca. What could this possibly mean? So, it seems your daughter is involved as well. It appears that your husband's relationship with Sofia has the approval of Rebecca. I was speechless. A profound sense of isolation and abandonment washed over me. What had I done to deserve this? Suppressing the urge to cry, I mustered the strength to request the detective to also record conversations between Bob and Rebecca. Several times each month, they would coax money from me for their movie outings and shopping sprees. I was convinced that amidst their casual conversations, there must be indisputable evidence. Days later, as I listened to the audio recording provided by the detective, I was rendered speechless. She's so annoying. Can't even do the simplest things right, then tries to act like she's your mom. Why don't you just leave her? Sophie has been waiting patiently, hasn't she? Speaking of which, Rebecca, I think it's too early to talk about divorce. That's ridiculous. Sophie has been waiting, hasn't she? I discussed it with Sophia. I can't stand being around that ugly woman. Same here, but she's the one bringing in more money. So, you understand, right? Is that a yes? I wasn't sure. Yeah, that's the plan. If I rush into a divorce, I'll lose access to that money. We need to proceed cautiously, withdraw as much as we can, then let Sophia move in. Exactly. I'll need to gauge if Sophia can handle that lifestyle, and if not, I'll have to persuade her. But I think she'll be fine. She's so accommodating. Beautiful women just have a different way about them, you know? Yeah, I get it. I regret it deeply. Marrying that unattractive woman was the biggest mistake of my life. That evening, beneath the scalding spray of the shower, tears streamed down my face. I wept until there were no more tears left to shed, and in that moment, I resolved to take action. Enough was enough. If that was their scheme, then so be it. I refused to be taken advantage of any longer. I vividly recall the arduous weeks that followed. Each day, I buried my emotions and forged ahead with the preparations for my liberation. Even on the day of Rebecca's middle school graduation, my heart remained numb to any profound sentiment. Oh dear, I can't seem to settle on a hairstyle. It's quite vexing. Whose genes sculpted this face? Truly, Rebecca bore an uncanny resemblance to me. Gazing into the mirror, I brushed off her usual snide remarks. Hey, I need some cash, around $400 should cover it. What else would a kid need $400 for? Besides, it's your graduation today, right? Obviously, I'll be hanging out with friends afterwards and grabbing dinner with Dad. Reluctantly, I handed over the $400, silently declaring it the final time. Rebecca accepted the money without a hint of gratitude. Hey, I'm planning to get plastic surgery soon. Plastic surgery? So you're bidding farewell to this face that supposedly resembles mine. I can hardly wait. A complete makeover before high school kicks off. Okay. Ha, I'm surprised. I expected you to be more opposed to it. What a disappointment. Well, I won't interfere. It's your body, Rebecca. You get what I mean, right? It's only natural to consider plastic surgery with a face like this. It's your fault, she asserted. Later, I drove Bob and Rebecca to middle school. Just before reaching the school, Rebecca requested I stop the car. Dad and I will get off here. You can head home, you know. I don't want my friends to see you, right? Of course, I replied, heading back home. I had no inclination to attend the ceremony. Everything proceeded according to plan, a welcome relief. Upon returning to the apartment, I awaited the arrival of a truck and 3 men. We'll pack and move everything out. With the amount of stuff, it should take about 2 hours. Thank you. I appreciate your assistance. That day marked my relocation to a new apartment, leaving the divorce papers on the table of the old one. I had requested time off from work and spent it touring various domestic destinations, relishing the rare freedom. Though perhaps I could have savored it more without the persistent calls from Bob and Rebecca. A few days later, I returned to the new apartment, refreshed from my journey. After finally picking up one of Bob's incessant calls, he exclaimed, "You finally answered. Where are you? What are you up to?" "Just relaxing in my room, watching TV. Why the urgency? You sound flustered. Is everything all right?" "What do you mean? Is something wrong? What do you mean by your room? Explain yourself properly." "There's nothing." "What do you mean? You saw it, right? The divorce papers." "That's it. No further explanation needed, right?" "So you knew about About what?" "If you mean your affair, I knew. I have no intentions of backing down. I figured, with your income, you can't support Rebecca. Tough luck, I'm filing for divorce and seeking alimony too." "Who says I'm going to pay alimony? We should discuss this matter calmly." "Sure, you can bring Rebecca along or not. It doesn't matter to me." With no desire to continue the conversation, I abruptly ended the call, powered off my phone, and severed all contact. I chose the caf for our discussion, the very same one where I had first seen Bob meeting with Sophia. But this time, only Bob showed up. There was no sign of Rebecca. She must be recovering from her plastic surgery. Poor girl. "Who's that with you?" I inquired. "This is my attorney, Mr. Johnson," Bob replied. "You brought a lawyer?" "Well, did you bring the filled out divorce papers as I asked?" As I've said, I won't fill out such a thing. I'll tell you as many times as it takes. I have no intention of breaking up. Do you just want the money? I do. Do you think we can continue our marriage for that reason? What? Who said I'm after your money? Who said it? You're making assumptions about people's feelings. I nodded at Mr. Johnson, who then took out his smartphone and calmly pressed play. What ensued was a conversation between Bob and Rebecca from that day. Bob's complexion turned ashen instantly. It's quite an experience to hear your own derogatory remarks played back to you. I don't want to breathe the same air as that ugly woman. If I carelessly break up with her, I won't be able to use the money. Bob's voice echoed through the cafe. No matter how many times I hear those words, they pierce straight through my heart. Knowing that this is his true sentiment sends shivers down my spine. A recording? What the hell do you think you're doing? Bob exclaimed. What am I doing? I think I should be the one asking that. Did you use the money? I want to clarify something before we proceed. You have been seeing Sophia, correct? I asked, studying Bob's expression. Yes, that's correct, Bob affirmed, nodding. In that case, Mr. Johnson interjected, if you have no intentions of divorcing, we will proceed with filing for divorce in family court. We will also discuss the division of assets. The court will examine the circumstances and ascertain the facts to determine whether the divorce is warranted. Mr. Johnson held up the smartphone. The conversation you had with your daughter earlier is quite significant in this case. In my professional opinion, divorce seems highly likely. Oh, I see. I came here today to discuss what happens next, I explained, pulling out various documents meticulously prepared for this occasion. This chart outlines the money I've given you and when, and this document details the utility bill payments. What? What's all this for? Bob demanded, clearly taken aback. And here's a record of withdrawals from our joint account, I continued, presenting another document. Rebecca's surgery incurred significant expenses, didn't it? Eyelid surgery, eye shape correction, double eyelid surgery, nostril reduction, filtrum reduction, creating tear bags, cheek and nasal bone shaving. The total costs amounted to $40,000. There's only about $20,000 left in savings. We used to have $70,000. You've spent quite a sum, haven't you? That was for Rebecca. I could replenish the savings. Do you realize I was the one who primarily contributed to that money? I could feel my anger rising. I'm willing to divide what remains in the account for asset distribution. I won't make any claims about the cost of Rebecca's surgery. However, what I do expect you to compensate for is the emotional turmoil I've endured. Keep that in mind. And by the way, have you been in contact with that woman, Sophia? No, not really, Bob replied. That's concerning. I had a private investigator look into her background. Turns out she has a criminal record. You need to watch your back. A criminal record? What for? Bob's alarm was palpable. She was charged with fraud and arrested. It seems she was colluding with the director of another cosmetic surgery clinic. What in the? She must have seen you and Rebecca as easy targets. My sympathies, and Rebecca's surgery. I hope it went smoothly. If not, we might have to negotiate with the hospital or even consider legal action. We'll need to assess whether the clinic is willing to settle. In cases like this, many clinics refuse to admit fault and become obstinate, Mr. Johnson added, causing Bob's complexion to noticeably pale. That's all for today. Send the divorce papers to Mr. Johnson. I will be providing my address. Wait, please, just one more thing. Can you lend me some money? Bob's plea was pitiful. I can't believe I ever fell for a man like him. Absolutely not, I stated firmly, leaving the cafe with Mr. Johnson, leaving Bob behind, visibly devastated. Rumors later circulated about Bob and Rebecca's downward spiral. Bob struggled to afford even a modest apartment on his salary alone. To support Rebecca, she had to take up odd jobs like newspaper delivery, and they downsized to a cheaper apartment, compromising their standard of living. Bob's web design projects weren't sufficient, and he resorted to day labor to make ends meet. It was truly pitiful, but Bob had to persevere. After all, he still owed me alimony. I decided to allow him to pay in installments. Paying the full $30,000 upfront would have been impossible for Bob, given his struggling business that barely covered his supplementary income. Taking out a loan was out of the question. I could have suggested borrowing from a loan shark, but I didn't want to subject him to that kind of pressure. A few days later, Rebecca called me. As expected, the surgery was a failure. It was far from what she had hoped for. Rebecca and I met at the cafe, having not seen each other in a long time. She still had bandages on part of her face. The surgery had left noticeable marks, and she would require further procedures to correct them. It was a dire situation. So still no luck reaching that Sophia girl, huh? Yeah, you were spot on, Mom. She saw us as easy targets, Rebecca remarked, gazing out the window with a thoughtful expression. She appeared more mature to me than ever before. Well, I should get going now. Part-time job first and high school homework. My schedule's pretty packed, she explained. Good luck, I wished her. Thanks, Mom, and I'm really sorry for all the trouble I've caused, Rebecca apologized sincerely. No need to suddenly be so polite. I won't be giving you any more money, okay? I won't bring it up again. With a nod, Rebecca left the cafe, marking the beginning of where I am today. I have few regrets. I'm content with my current life. Rebecca is practically independent now, and I hold no lingering feelings for my ex-husband, who had little to offer besides his appearance. I saw him recently in town, covered in dirt, working in construction gear and a helmet. Did he always have such sorrowful eyes? He looked entirely different. I hardly recognized him. Making a living is challenging, and he deserved to face difficulties after squandering so much money. It's not all about looks. I truly believe that now. I'll continue to do my best just as I am. With the reset button pressed on my life, the future appears brighter than ever before. Next week is my son's birthday, and I'd like to order a cake for 20 people, Emily said. Hearing this, I fell silent. 20 servings isn't a typical request, but she must have known I couldn't refuse. Understood, I muttered softly. Emily smirked unpleasantly, but I was determined to have the last laugh. I clenched my fists, resolute not to let her have her way. My name is Rothy. I'm a regular housewife who works part-time at a local supermarket. My only son, Nicholas, graduated from college and found a job at a nearby company. We are a happy family living together harmoniously. However, there's one unpleasant person at my part-time job, Emily. Emily's father, Christopher, is an executive at the supermarket. She transferred here from a different company about 2 years ago. Despite being a full-time employee hired mid-career, us part-timers, including me, have been here longer. From the beginning, Emily has been arrogant, ignoring advice and guidance. Both the staff and part-timers are at their wits' end. About a year ago, a part-timer named Rachel confronted her. Emily, even if your dad's an executive, you're just an employee here. We part-timers are your seniors. You should speak respectfully and listen to our advice. I thought Rachel was amazing for saying what no one else would. However, soon after, Rachel was transferred to a location too far for her to commute, forcing her to resign. Everyone thought it was Emily's doing, but nobody dared to say it out loud. Since then, no one has opposed her. The supermarket where I've worked for a long time is more than just a job. It's a cherished place where I belong. I often hang out with my part-time colleagues, and apart from Emily, we have good relationships. Then one day, as I continued to work, hoping for these happy days to last, something happened. Mom, I'm thinking of getting married, Nicholas announced. My husband Dylan and I were overjoyed. Truth be told, I always wanted a daughter to go shopping with, have tea with, and share a mother-daughter relationship. But after Nicholas, we weren't blessed with more children, so that dream remained unfulfilled. I hoped that by getting along with Nicholas's wife, I could build such a relationship. What's she like? I eagerly asked. Nicholas seemed happy. She's a very kind girl. Her parents seem well established, like she comes from a good family. I'm still a bit worried if I'm good enough for her. That's wonderful. I'm excited to meet her, I replied. Her name is Emily, Nicholas continued. He often talked about her, saying Emily this and Emily that. She apparently attends cooking classes and is good at cooking. She seems to like sweets too. Hearing Nicholas talk about her made me happy. A week after Nicholas's news on the weekend, she was coming over to meet us. She arranged it to match my day off. Not being as skilled in cooking to impress someone who excels at it, I ordered pizza and prepared a cake for that day. Dylan and I waited at home for Nicholas to bring her over. Then the long-awaited doorbell rang. She's here, I announced, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. I rushed from the living room to the front door. We're back. Emily, this is Mom, Nicholas said. As I turned to the woman beside him, I froze in shock. Nice to meet you, I'm Emily. Hi, Emily. Right before me stood Emily, the very source of my troubles at my part-time supermarket job. "You know my mom?" Nicholas asked. I had no idea Nicholas's mom was you. Emily seemed equally surprised. "Come in for now, please," I said, still shaken, inviting them inside. Leaving me at the entrance, Nicholas led Emily to the living room. Hearing them talk with Dylan, I took a deep breath to calm myself. They had met at university. Emily is 2 years older than Nicholas. They were introduced by an acquaintance and reconnected about a year ago, eventually starting to date. "I was surprised to learn your part-time job was at my workplace. You said you were in administration, so I thought you worked at a law office near the supermarket," Nicholas said, laughing nonchalantly, unaware of where his girlfriend worked. Indeed, Emily had graduated from law school and used to work at a law firm. Nicholas must have assumed she continued working at a law office and never asked explicitly. We chatted around the pizza, the conversation mingling with the unexpected reality of our new connection. I could only force a smile, unable to accept the reality and wishing it was just a dream. "I'm truly surprised to think you're Rothy's son. I've been under your mom's care at work," Emily said, feigning innocence as if she treated us part-timers as anything but slaves. "That's not true. I'm sure everyone's grateful for someone like you. Mom always says she enjoys her job and that there are nice people at the supermarket," Nicholas said. "That's nice to hear," I replied, though I never intended to include Emily in that group of good people. Naturally, I couldn't say such a thing, so I stood up. "I'll go prepare the dessert. Emily, would you like coffee or tea?" I wanted to be alone, my heart racing. I needed to calm down quickly. "I'll help, Emily," she said suddenly, standing up, an unusual gesture from her considering our part-time job. "It's okay, you're a guest. Please sit down," I insisted, but Emily walked to the kitchen. Dylan and Nicholas watched with smiles, so I sighed quietly. However, Emily didn't miss a beat. "It's really surprising to think you'll be my mother-in-law." "Yes, that's right. It will be easier to get along. Looking forward to it." What did she mean by that? I had a bad feeling about those words, but I tried to keep her. Her smile was a sneer, always displaying contempt towards me at work. "Just so you know, don't say anything unnecessary to Nicholas." Her words wiped the smile from my face. Emily knew. She knew she was disliked by us part-timers simply because I happened to be Nicholas's mom. She must have been planning to do whatever she wanted, using Christopher and Nicholas as shields. I turned pale, frightened by her, fearing she would destroy our happy days. Emily eventually left the kitchen without helping. That must have been her purpose for coming here. "What about the preparation?" Nicholas's voice interrupted. Emily replied curtly. I returned cheerily, not wanting to be in the way, so I came back. I told Nicholas, "Won't you reconsider the marriage?" But my words would undoubtedly make my son dislike me. "Don't interfere with Nicholas's marriage," even Dylan scolded me. So I just watched the two of them. Still, they seemed to have a good marriage, and Nicholas looked happy. A month after the marriage, I found out Emily was pregnant. Although it was complicated, I was also happy. Nicholas and Emily built a house next to ours, a separate household from Nicholas's. Dylan told me you should be a little more considerate, but knowing Emily's true nature, I wanted to avoid her. Still, I loved my grandson. His name was Ethan, a lively boy I rarely saw, but I looked forward to hearing his healthy cries. However, about 6 months after he was born, there was a day when his crying could be heard all day long. I finally rang the neighbor's doorbell. "What is it?" I said. "Hello." Probably because I was the one who called out, Emily, who seemed to have been asleep, came to the door. Knowing it was me, I was worried because Ethan had been crying non-stop. "Is everything okay?" I simply stated the reason, but Emily looked annoyed. "Are you saying I'm neglecting Ethan?" she retorted sharply. "No, that's not what I'm saying. I was just worried. If you're tired, I can watch him or help in any way," I hastily offered. But Emily didn't seem to hear. "Dealing with modern kids is difficult," she muttered dismissively. In the end, I was turned away, and Ethan kept crying. A few days later, Emily came to our house with Ethan in her arms. "Rothy, could you watch Ethan for a bit?" she asked unexpectedly. "Yes, of course," I replied, surprised by the sudden change in attitude. "What's this about?" I tried to understand the situation, but Emily left Ethan and his things at our house and departed. Oh, Ethan's here, Dylan noticed from the entrance, happily taking Ethan from my hands and heading to the living room. I followed Dylan, carrying Ethan's belongings. Since then, Emily started leaving Ethan with us frequently from morning till night. It was like running a daycare alongside my part-time job. Emily was on parental. I did agree to watch him, but there's a limit. I talked to Dylan and Nicholas about it, but they don't seem to take it seriously. Eventually, I had to take time off work or ask Dylan to watch Ethan briefly so I could rush to and from work. However, interfering too much and upsetting Emily would be troublesome. Despite the difficulty, I enjoy and cherish my time with Ethan. Dylan also looks forward to Ethan's daily visits. Busy but happy, the three of us spent enjoyable times together. Half a year later, Ethan's first birthday was approaching, and I was pondering what to give him as his first present. In the past, birthdays meant inviting relatives for celebrations, but there was no invitation from Nicholas or Emily. They must be planning a modest family celebration. While looking at my phone and thinking this, I received a call. It's Emily. What could it be? I answered the phone suspiciously, as Emily usually didn't contact me. Hello, Rathi. As you probably know, next week is my son's birthday, so I'd like a cake for 20. People were surprised by this sudden request. I was at a loss for words. What do you mean? I managed to ask. Just what I said. We're inviting relatives for a celebration, so I'm asking for the cake. I plan to serve a meal, so I can't manage the cake too. Plus, I thought I'd give you a chance to show off. Aren't I kind? Emily's words filled my mind with question marks. We weren't even invited to the celebration, and a cake for 20 people is not something a regular person would request. Emily's relatives, aunts, and uncles will be among the about 20 guests. Surely my employer at the supermarket and Emily's father-in-law, Christopher, will be there too, I thought, trying to make sense of the situation. I already told Dad that you will make the cake. It's a chance to show your good side. Who knows? You might get promoted to a full-time position, Emily said mockingly. I don't aspire to be a full-time employee, I replied quietly. As a part-timer, I shouldn't worry so much, but I couldn't forget Rachel, who was driven to resign. I told myself I must avoid being pushed into quitting. Emily's words are like knowing. I couldn't refuse, knowing she was exploiting my weakness. Cakes are easy. I'm more experienced in cooking, so I'll give advice, she said presumptuously, more than I had anticipated. Reluctantly, I agreed. All right, but with 20 people, maybe you should reconsider serving individual portions or using a large platter, I suggested. Ha? I'm the senior here. I'm not asking for advice. And what do you mean, okay? Can't you speak more respectfully? Emily retorted sharply. What kind of person is she? I held back my words, muttering quietly, understood. I could imagine Emily's smirking face on the other end of the phone, my frustration seeping through. She probably planned to ridicule me by presenting her perfect full course alongside my poor cake. But I wouldn't let that happen. I made a decision. Of course, Ethan was the star. I wanted to make his first birthday memorable, even though he wouldn't remember it. I started planning the cake design and went to a baking supply store for ingredients. Though I felt forced, I was also excited. Emily seemed annoyed by my amateur excitement. It won't amount to much. You should have asked me, the senior, for advice, she said when she came over to scoff. But I had no time for that. Later, Dylan and I were officially invited to the birthday. On the day, Dylan, with nothing else to do, left early for their house. It's too early, I said, but he was too excited. I sent him off with a smile and got up, ready to prepare. I muttered, checking the time, when the doorbell rang. Rathi, are you ready? Emily started entering without permission. She frowned upon seeing me relaxed. What, you were sitting? Where's the cake? I was about to start. Don't worry, I'll bring it on time, I assured her. It was only 8:00 a.m., 4 hours until everyone arrived, but Emily was shocked. An amateur can't make a cake for 20 people in 4 hours, she ranted. I've been preparing perfect dishes since 4:00 a.m. Don't ruin the event. Okay, I get it. It's Ethan's birthday. I wouldn't do that, I snapped back, making her frown even more. Just make sure to bring the cake by 12:00 p.m. She left, snorting. Was she bragging about finishing her part? I laughed at her frustration, doing nothing until the door closed. Then, I started. I brought the genoise from another room to the kitchen. A cake for 20 people can't be baked in a home oven, so I had borrowed a friend's oven to bake the large dough. I decorated it with prepared cream and fruits, made Ethan's favorite cars from cookie dough, and by 11 a.m., I was satisfied with the finished cake. I hurriedly finished and called Nicholas to safely transport the cake. I left it in a cool place and headed to the room where everyone was gathering, the largest room in Nicholas's house. They planned to eventually build a wall here to divide the room and turn it into a children's room. It was a good opportunity for such an event, as we hadn't celebrated the new house with relatives before. Ethan, unsettled by the crowd, was crying with Nicholas holding him. Everyone smiled at little Ethan's discomfort. Then Emily, with her mother-in-law Olivia's help, proudly brought in her dishes. "Here's the appetizer assortment," she announced, placing small plates in front of each guest. The presentation was indeed beautiful and well-crafted. However, by the time she finished serving everyone, the first plates needed clearing. Ethan was still crying, and Emily and Olivia were busy. I stood to help, but Christopher said, "You should sit, Rothy. We're supposed to be the guests." Indeed, I agreed and sat back down, but the situation looked tough. I took Ethan from Nicholas and suggested he help Emily. As soon as I held Ethan, he became happy and started laughing. Everyone was charmed by this, but Emily looked displeased. She couldn't treat me like a pawn anymore, especially after hearing Christopher's earlier words. Christopher had been attentive, asking me about my job and Emily. I couldn't tell him everything, but our conversation brought up Rachel, who had been forced to resign. Did he really do that? He didn't seem like such a person. The dishes, served at intervals of 10 minutes each, were somehow completed, but judging by the relatives' reactions, it didn't seem they were fully satisfied. No matter how confident Emily was in her cooking, she should have considered serving family-style dishes given the guests and situation. "All the dishes are served. Did everyone enjoy them?" Emily said this with a happy expression. It seemed she was the most. Olivia next to her hadn't eaten anything and looked distressed, which was pitiable. "Rothy has made Ethan's cake. It's ready, right?" Emily turned to me. "Yes, I'll bring it," I replied. I asked Nicholas for help and brought in the large cake. Emily's nieces and nephews gathered around the big box. Dylan held Ethan, who didn't show interest yet, but the adults were curious about the large cake box. "Here it is." Nicholas and I opened the box. Cheers erupted at the sight of the cake we revealed. The children's genuine reactions were delightful, and I couldn't help but smile. The relatives were impressed, asking, "Did you really make this?" They took pictures. However, Emily, in a voice that cut through the calm atmosphere, exclaimed loudly, "What? You said you'd make it, not buy it. I wanted a unique cake for Ethan." She must have been tired and hungry. Her anger peaked with everyone's positive response to my cake. "I did make it. Lies, you weren't doing anything this morning. The genoise was already baked, and the decoration was ready," Emily insisted, surprised. "Genoise. It's a type of sponge cake. I've always called it that." I smiled at Emily. "Ha!" Christopher laughed. Then Dylan explained, "Actually, my wife used to be a pastry chef. I couldn't bake a cake for 20 people in our oven, so I asked a friend to borrow theirs and baked it yesterday." When I said that, Emily's face fell. She must have been upset, her plans having gone awry. It was fun to bake such a large cake after a long time. "Thank you for the opportunity, Emily. Now, let's take pictures with Ethan and the cake, and then we can all enjoy it," I suggested. Seeing everyone's the most gratifying part was seeing everyone smile. Ethan, influenced by everyone's joy, smiled too. The group photo captured Emily's stained face amid everyone else beaming, a moment worth cherishing without any malice. While everyone enjoyed the cake, I held Ethan, who happily ate his own cake made of yogurt cream and banana pancakes. After seeing off the relatives and cleaning up with Olivia, I finally had a moment to relax. "Ethan is really attached to you, Rothy," Olivia remarked, watching Ethan in my arms as we all took a coffee break. Nicholas responded, "She always looks after him." I noticed Emily's stunned expression, but before she could react, Christopher intervened. "What do you mean, always? Aren't you on parental leave?" Christopher's question caught Emily off guard. "Well, not always, just occasionally, like when I go to the hospital," Emily replied sheepishly. I gave a wry smile, unable to say anything. Nicholas realized his slip-up and looked uneasy. Christopher, noticing today's events and Emily's behavior, seemed contemplative. "Don't lie, tell the truth," he demanded. Emily murmured in a small voice, "I left him when I went out with friends." Christopher pressed further. Is that all you burdened her with? You didn't know Rothy was a pastry chef, did you? Then why did you ask her to make such a big cake? Surely you were trying to be mean to her. Emily turned red and fell silent at Christopher's words, caught off guard. Nicholas was flustered. Apologize to Rothy, he said firmly to Emily. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she looked at me and murmured softly, I'm sorry. Christopher then politely bid farewell to Dylan and me. I'm sorry for the trouble my daughter caused, he said. It's all right, we understand you're busy, but please come to visit sometimes, we replied, seeing off their parents-in-law. Regarding Rachel, it seemed Christopher was not involved. Emily had persuaded the manager to transfer her after I inquired about it. Learning the truth, Christopher disciplined the manager and Emily had to resign at his behest. Christopher, angry at her for disgracing him, later visited the store where I worked to apologize. He indeed seems to be a responsible person. Since then, Emily has been respectful and no longer belittles people. She seems to genuinely care for Ethan. Nicholas, unaware of her previous coldness towards me, was disillusioned after learning everything. It was the first time he scolded Emily. Emily realized her mistakes and became much more subdued, as if she had changed as a person. She probably had been acting as she pleased, misusing Christopher's influence and thinking herself important. Being reprimanded by her father and husband at her age was a humbling experience. While I inwardly chuckled at this, I felt relieved. Looking at the photo from that day, I naturally continued my part-time job. There was no longer the needless burden of unexpectedly taking care of Ethan, so it didn't cause any issues with my shifts. I've been enjoying my time as usual, going out with my part-time colleagues. Emily's attitude has changed. She no longer behaves as before and has even asked me to teach her how to bake cakes. I was genuinely happy about this. While it's not the mother-daughter relationship I had dreamed of, I hope to gradually build a good relationship with my son's wife. I want us to become a family that celebrates and watches over Aiken's growth together. My name is Olivia, and I'm a 32-year-old housewife. My husband, Liam, is 34 and works an ordinary office job. We've been married for 8 years and have a precious daughter named Ava, who is 6 years old. Ava is incredibly adorable, and both Liam and I are completely smitten with her. I have an older sister, Emma, who is 3 years older than me. She recently turned 35 and went through a divorce due to a personality clash, becoming a single mother to her 4-year-old son, Noah. One day, we planned to go to the zoo with Emma and Noah. Unfortunately, I caught a cold at the wrong time. When I tried to cancel the outing, Liam kindly offered to take the day off from work, not wanting to disappoint the kids. Even though it meant he and Emma would be alone together with the children, I didn't think anything of it. However, one day when I was walking through the shopping district after running errands, I happened to see Liam and Emma sitting together in a cafe. I wondered why they were together, but as it was almost time for Ava to come home from her after-school program, I headed home, still feeling uneasy. That night, when Liam came home, I asked him about it. He explained that it had started raining and they happened to meet, so they went to the cafe to wait for the rain to stop. He seemed calm and nonchalant, so I trusted him at the time. But after that day, Liam started coming home late more frequently. He also began asking for more money, claiming he was short on cash. On his days off, he went out more often, and whenever Emma visited our house, their interaction seemed more familiar than before. Suspicion began to creep into my mind, even though our relationship with Ava remained as strong as ever. Then an incident occurred that made me realize something was amiss. Emma came over as usual and asked if I could take care of Noah for about a week. A friend had invited her on a trip to Hawaii, and it was difficult to bring Noah along. Emma pleaded, saying she needed a break after being so busy. I understood how hard it was for her since the divorce, and though reluctant, I agreed to help. As Emma's trip approached, Liam told me he would be away for a while on a business trip, visiting multiple areas over several days. I thought it was a tough coincidence, but I was shocked when I learned his departure date. It was the same day as Emma's trip to Hawaii. Was this really a coincidence? Liam's increasing phone use and secretive behavior made me more suspicious. When Emma visited, their interaction seemed unusually close. On the day of Emma's departure, she arrived early in the morning with Noah. The moment I held Noah's hand and immediately noticed something was off. His hand was unusually hot and his body felt feverish when I lifted him. I didn't need a thermometer to know he had a high fever. Emma, doesn't Noah have a fever? I asked. Yes, he's been running a fever since yesterday. It hasn't gone down yet, she admitted. What? We have to take him to the hospital right away. Surely your son's health should be more important than a trip, I insisted. But then Emma said something outrageous. So I'm counting on you. What? You're leaving your child here while he has a fever? I was incredulous. I have no choice, do I? I made the promise a long time ago. It's ridiculous to pay a cancellation fee, she replied. That's not the point, is it? Isn't Noah the most important here? I argued. Of course he's important, but I'm not worried because you're here, Olivia. Take good care of him for me, Emma said. Wait, Emma. Despite my attempts to stop her, Emma left. I couldn't believe it. Noah was suffering from a high fever, and she left him in my care. Noah seemed to be really struggling, probably because of the strain of moving while having a high fever. I quickly laid him down on the bed and placed a cold, wet towel on his forehead. While I was preparing an ice pillow in the freezer, Liam woke up. Liam, it seems Noah has a fever, I said. Really? Is that so? He replied sleepily. Emma is terrible. She's going on a trip, leaving Noah in this state, I fumed. Well, she had planned it long ago, right? She probably can't cancel at this point, he reasoned. You too, Liam. Poor Noah. If you feel that way, you should take good care of him, I said. Liam, can't you do something about your business trip? If Noah has some contagious disease, he might pass it to Ava. I'll take care of Noah, so I want you to take care of Ava, I pleaded. As a mother who loves her daughter dearly, I reluctantly agreed. Work is important, but surely our daughter is even more important. However, my expectations were betrayed. What? That's impossible. You should know that, I exclaimed. If you're worried, just leave her at your parents' house, Liam suggested. Even if you say that my parents are busy with work and your parents' house is too far away to go now, I countered. Then there's no choice, Liam replied. Well, all we need to do is let Noah sleep. It'll be fine, he said casually. Say that so casually. What do you want me to do then? I retorted. It's time. I have to go. I'll be going then. Liam hurried off, leaving me behind. I quickly called my parents. They couldn't take a day off work on such short notice, but my mother promised to leave early and come pick up Ava as soon as possible, which gave me some relief. While waiting for my mother to arrive, I kept Ava confined to her room, feeling sorry for her. Meanwhile, Noah's condition seemed to be worsening. In addition to this fever, he started to cough in the early afternoon. When my mother arrived early from work, I immediately took Noah to the pediatrician. On the way to the hospital, my heart ached seeing Noah suffer even from the car ride. The doctor diagnosed it as a common cold and prescribed an antipyretic, advising me to monitor his condition closely. However, I was warned to call an ambulance without hesitation if his fever rose further or if he became dangerously delirious. I'm sorry, Mom, I whispered to myself, overwhelmed with concern for Noah's well-being. I suddenly had to ask you to take care of Ava. Don't worry about it. More importantly, I'm worried about Noah. My mother assured me over the phone. Noah was as dear to my parents as Ava. After finishing the call with my mother, I felt an urge to call my husband's company. I needed to know the location of his supposed business trip in case of emergencies. The response confirmed my worst fears. He was on paid leave. Looking up at the sky, a bad premonition began to feel real. I opened my husband's laptop, which I had never seen before, and examined his search history. The destination was Hawaii, and all arrangements, plane tickets and hotel reservations, had been made by him. I recognized the name of the hotel. It was where my sister had mentioned staying. My sister and husband in Hawaii at the same hotel at the same time. Such a coincidence was implausible, not even 1 in 10,000. The fact that my husband, who claimed to be on a business trip, was on paid leave in Hawaii was abnormal. Out of curiosity, I checked my sister's social media. There were no new posts, but her recent ones showed her often with someone. The clothing visible in the photos looked all too familiar. What turned my suspicion into certainty was a picture where the person with her wore a watch that I had given my husband, not expensive, but distinct in design. This person, clearly not my husband, appeared in multiple photos with her, wearing the same clothes and watch. The possibility of coincidence was virtually zero. Then I found the conclusive photo in an album labeled Window Shopping. My sister was reflected in a shop window, and at the edge of the photo, unmistakably, was my husband. My sister, elated, had likely posted the photo without realizing he was in the reflection. With trembling hands, I saved all the photos. There was no doubt now. My sister and husband were having an affair. They were together right now, and it felt like everything fell into place. The foundation I had built with my husband was crumbling all at once. I called them repeatedly, but each time an automated voice message played, it seemed they had turned off their phones. Noah's fever still hadn't subsided, and seeing his pained expression, anger began to well up inside me. Despite a young child suffering so much, despite my own tough situation, at this very moment, my sister and husband were likely laughing and enjoying their trip to Hawaii. Could there be a more cruel story than this? Shaking with anger, I tried to think about what to do next, but that would have to wait. First and foremost, I needed to wait for Noah to recover. Yet there was no sign of his fever decreasing. If anything, it seemed to be getting worse. I was shocked when I took his temperature minus 107 degrees. Children are susceptible to high fevers. Ava had once had a fever of 104 degrees, but never this high. Why wasn't the fever reducer working? Noah was completely exhausted, and any movement seemed to cause him pain. Desperate to suppress the panic threatening to overwhelm me, I was just considering calling an ambulance when my smartphone buzzed. "Mommy," Noah murmured weakly, his face contorted in pain, calling out for his mother. "I can't forgive them. I'll never forgive them," I vowed silently, my vision clouding with rage. Just as it seemed my anger would consume me, Noah's condition suddenly took a turn for the worse. A week had passed since then, and despite my sorrow, today was a clear day. I found myself staring blankly at the wide blue sky, tears streaming down my face. I had lost count of how many times I had cried, yet my tears showed no signs of drying up. Ava's hand trembled in mine, and as I lifted her up, I could see my parents, also in tears, comforting her. Other family members and friends gathered, all sharing in our grief. Everyone, without exception, was in tears. Suddenly, my smartphone vibrated. I set Ava down and glanced at the display. It was my sister's name. "Hello," I answered hesitantly. "Oh, Olivia, it's been a while. I just got back from Hawaii. I'm at the airport now, and I'm going to pick up Noah next. Thanks for looking after him." My sister's voice came through the line as if from another world. I uttered a phrase as if whispering, "Our dear has gone to heaven." A single tear, which I thought I had under control, spilled over. Unable to comprehend my words, my sister asked back in a bewildered voice over the phone, "Heaven? What are you talking about? That makes no sense." "So our loved one is in heaven while you were enjoying your trip to Hawaii," I said, struggling to contain my emotions. "I don't understand what you're saying," my sister replied, sounding confused. "You'll understand when you get here. The funeral is over, and we're now at the crematorium." "What? The crematorium?" My sister's voice was filled with shock and disbelief, and the phone call abruptly ended. No. My sister rushed out of the taxi, desperation etched on her face. She called out his name and looked around frantically, but Noah wasn't there. "Where is he?" "He's not here." "Of course he isn't," I said softly, pointing in the direction of the crematorium. Though modern crematoriums don't emit smoke like the old ones, there was no mistaking the solemn reality. Someone was being cremated right now. "About Noah. The day you dropped him off, his fever suddenly spiked to 107 degrees Fahrenheit. 107 degrees? My sister's voice faltered. The antipyretic we got from the pediatrician didn't work, and his condition deteriorated rapidly. We called an ambulance in a panic, but no. I couldn't bring myself to finish the sentence. "We're in the middle of a funeral right now," I continued, spreading my arms towards the crematorium. "Hey, what's going on? What happened to Noah? Why are you here?" A man shouted, breaking the silence. It was my husband, shock and disbelief evident in his voice. "It doesn't matter why I'm here. What about Noah?" I retorted sharply. "Of course it matters." My husband's voice was strained, filled with urgency and concern. With nothing left to lose, I faced my husband, ready to confront the truth. I shouted back, "What kind of nerve do you two have to abandon your family and go on a fair trip? Noah was sick with a fever, and despite my plea for help, you ignored us and went on your trip. Are you out of your mind? What are you saying? I've known for a long time. When I contacted your company, they said you had taken paid leave. When I checked the computer, there was a reservation for a trip to Hawaii, staying on the same flight and in the same hotel as my sister. You think you can explain that away as a coincidence? At my intense accusation, my husband was left speechless. Olivia, tell me, is no? His voice broke. How can you ask that question now? Why do you think we're here? Why do you think we're wearing mourning clothes at the crematorium? Don't you understand? I demanded, my voice trembling with emotion. No. My sister's scream pierced the tense air, collapsing into tears. I looked down at her with cold eyes. You have no right to cry, Emma. You're the worst kind of person, abandoning your son to go on a trip with your sister's husband. I was so lonely all by myself. That's why. Emma's voice quivered. So you laid hands on my husband? I accused. What? I did nothing wrong. I'm not in the wrong, Emma insisted, unbelievably lashing out in anger. I didn't choose to have a child, nor did I choose to become a single mother. When my ex-husband and I divorced, I wanted him to take custody of Noah, but he refused. So I did my best to raise him on my own. But to think Noah would? No, Emma. The one comforting my crying sister was my husband. It seemed he had no intention of hiding their affair any longer. Don't be selfish. Our parents and I have helped as much as we can. Leaving the sick child alone to have an affair is no excuse. I lashed out at them. You don't even realize how despicable you are. You're the worst. Hey, Olivia, aren't you being too harsh on your sister? Emma is shocked because Noah has passed away, my husband interjected. Shut up. Don't you dare act superior. Just so you know, we're getting a divorce. I'll make you pay for everything you owe, so be prepared. What? What does that have to do with this? It has everything to do with this. I yelled back at him, my sister crying in the background. The situation had become a battlefield. Our parents approached us in the midst of the chaos. My sister, tear-streaked, blamed them. Dad, Mom, why didn't you take proper care of Noah? Why did you let this happen? She cried out. Suddenly, a dry slapping sound echoed through the tension. It was our father who had slapped my sister's cheek. Don't be ridiculous. You abandoned your child and yet you blame others. You even went on a trip with your sister's husband. Shameless. I feel ashamed as a father for raising you like this, he condemned her. My sister cried even harder at our father's harsh words. I contemplated slapping my husband, but before I could act, a small boy's voice cut through the turmoil. Mom. My sister turned sharply. There he was. No. Noah, she exclaimed, moving towards him, but the man holding Noah quickly stepped back, out of her reach. Hey, what are you doing, Lucas? I demanded. The man holding Noah was my sister's ex-husband, the man who had divorced her due to their personal conflicts. That's what I should be saying. What are you doing, leaving Noah alone? It's none of your business. Noah is my son too, he argued fiercely. I followed the prevailing opinion that a mother is better because you insisted on not sharing custody, no matter how many times. I warned you, you wouldn't let me see him, and as I feared, it came to this. You have no right to be Noah's mother. Shut up. All you have to do is quietly pay child support. I'll pay whatever it takes for Noah's sake, but you didn't take care of him. You left him alone. You didn't even know how dangerous his condition was, and you were off on a pleasure trip. On that day when Noah's condition suddenly deteriorated, I panicked and called an ambulance. I called my parents and Lucas, Noah's father. While treatment was being given after arriving at the hospital, he was quite surprised when I told him my sister was on a pleasure trip with my husband. Afterwards, Noah, who was discharged from the hospital in good health, was recuperating at Lucas's parents' house. Wait, so Noah is safe, right? I asked my bewildered husband, staring at the crematorium. It's her grandmother, I explained. Our grandmother, who was bedridden due to her advanced age, has been under care at a nursing home. She passed away from old age the other day. Even though she was bedridden, she had a clear mind and doted on her great-grandchildren, Ava and Noah. When we occasionally visited her at the facility, her wrinkled face would crinkle even more. At the sudden farewell, I, my parents, and Ava were unable to cope and just wept. Noah, being just out of illness, didn't attend the funeral. But I called my sister to this crematorium after informing Lucas that Noah was fine, since his fever had completely gone down. You tricked me, my sister accused, staring daggers at us. We were the ones who wanted to accuse her. I didn't hear that Grandma had passed away either. My sister shouted. I called multiple times to tell you that Grandma had passed away. but your phone was turned off. Both of you were unreachable. Even though Grandma was kind to you, it's unacceptable to be late enough. Key, it's mocking me. No, let's go. You'd rather be with Mommy than this man, right, Lucas? I said firmly, trying to take no back from Lucas. It was Father scolding my sister who was confronting Lucas. Are you still thinking that you can keep no with you even after all this? Listen, what you did was on the verge of breaking the law. It's called parental neglect. You failed as a mother. Don't think that you can ever be by Noah's side again. Noah will be raised by Lucas. Dad, no way. We have even hired a lawyer and decided to fully cooperate with Lucas. You are no longer our daughter. Be prepared for us to cut ties, Mom. My sister's face turned pale at the disavowment from her parents. I stood imposingly in front of my sister and husband. My husband and I are getting a divorce. Why don't you two get along? You should be fine not seeing each of your children. After all, you left them behind to go on a trip overseas. Hearing this, my husband started yelling. Wait, Olivia. It was just a moment of weakness, just a fling with Emma. What's most important to me are you and Ava. Then my sister exploded. What did you say? A fling. You said you don't love Olivia anymore, that you only love me. Shut up. I love my daughter. Don't mess with me. My husband and sister resumed their quarrel. We left them arguing and departed with my grandmother's ashes. After that intense dispute, mediation ended peacefully since I had appointed a lawyer. Noah went to his father's place. I thought he would feel sad about being apart from his mother, but he was actually happy. It seemed my sister was completely non-functional as a mother. My husband and I also had our disagreements. He was stubborn, but after being scolded by both sets of parents, he deflated. The final blow came from our daughter. I don't need daddy, Ava declared. Though only 6, she seemed to mature early and understood her father's behavior in her own way. When Ava looked at my husband like he was an insect, I couldn't help but laugh. There was no greater punishment for my ex-husband, who had adored her daughter. He now has the right to see Ava, but whether she wants to see him is up to her. So the dramatic situation came to an end. Ava and I moved back to our parents' home, living peacefully. Our parents were thrilled to have Ava around. Next year, she would start first grade, and we were excited about her school preparation. I also planned to get a job at the same time she started school. Noah visited every now and then with Lucas. His face was unrecognizably bright compared to before, filled with smiles. Meanwhile, while we were living joyfully, it seemed my sister and ex-husband ended their relationship easily. Perhaps it truly was just a fling for my ex-husband. Perhaps he was shocked at being disliked by his daughter, so he easily discarded my sister. However, his affair with his wife's sister became known in his company, and he was deemed to have character problems. He was sent to the provinces, making it even harder for him to see Ava. He deserved it. As for my sister, it seemed she lived like a hollow shell for a while, frustrated by being abandoned by everything. Eventually, she disappeared. We filed a missing persons report, but I had a feeling my sister would never be found.
I looked at the video playing on my phone and couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was footage from our home security cameras showing our bedroom. I have an app on my phone that lets me see what's happening at home when I'm not there. In the video, I saw my husband with another woman. They seemed very close, like more than just friends. Then, I heard their voices. You sure she doesn't suspect anything? Yeah. I've been following your instructions exactly. She has no idea. It's going perfectly. I can't believe it. They laughed together. Then they playfully got onto the bed. I couldn't believe it. The woman with my husband was actually my own sister. My name is Nancy Hadley. I'm 50 years old. My husband, David, is turning 55 this year. We've been married for 20 years and we don't have any children. We used to have a comfortable life because we both worked. But things changed about 10 years ago when David was diagnosed with early onset dementia. As time passed, David's memory problems got worse. He started forgetting important meetings with clients and even how to do his job. Work became really hard for him, and everyday tasks became a struggle. He'd forget where he put things, how to dress himself. And he'd often get lost and bump into things because he couldn't remember directions. Once, he even left the kettle on, which nearly caused a fire. So David and I decided to ask my sister, Anne, for help. She runs a care home, so we trusted her advice. We took David to a hospital she recommended for tests, and that's when the doctors told us he had early onset dementia. Because of this, David had to stop working, and now we have a caregiver from Anne's facility come to our home twice a week to help out. Nowadays, I'm the one bringing in the money for our family, working hard every day, I said with a sigh. Nancy, how's David holding up? It was the day our regular caregiver, Miss Johnson, came over. Annie came along with her. And you came too. He's your husband after all, so I'm worried too. Ever since we started relying on Anne's help, she would often come over before I went to work. She's been looking after David like a brother ever since we got married, because she always wanted a big brother when we were younger. She was really upset when David was diagnosed with dementia, even though she was supposed to be busy with work herself. I really appreciate her checking in on us like this. I'm so grateful to Anne and Ms. Johnson for helping me take care of David while I'm at work. If I didn't have my job, we'd have money problems, so I'm really thankful for them. But they can't come on weekends, so I'm the only one taking care of David then. I'm working during the week and looking after David on weekends, and I hardly have any time for myself. I didn't realize it before, but I must be really tired, I explained. A nurse who knew me from the hospital where I took David for his checkups noticed how tired I looked. Mrs. Hadley, taking care of your husband is tough, but you need some time for yourself to rest. You're right, I know that. I could ask Anne and Ms. Johnson for help if I really needed it, but I don't want to bother them anymore. Oh, by the way, there's a new nurse here who used to work at a dementia hospital in New York. Maybe she can offer some help. See, there she is, the nurse pointed out. When I followed the nurse's gesture, I couldn't believe what I saw. It was Amy, my best friend from college. Amy looked just as surprised as I felt. We hugged each other tightly, overjoyed to be reunited. Amy, who used to play softball in college, still looked sharp with her neat short haircut. Nancy, you look exactly the same. And you haven't changed a bit, Amy. I'm so happy to see you. Amy shared that she had waited for her kids to grow up, ended her marriage, and come back to our hometown. Just tell me when you're free for a coffee, she suggested. When David finished his test and came out of the examination room in his wheelchair, Amy seemed taken aback. Oh, this is my husband, David. It feels like forever since we got married. Yep, it's been quite a while, I agreed. Amy, crouching down to David's eye level in the wheelchair, stopped for a moment. Is everything okay? I'm sorry, David. We met at your wedding once. Really? I'm counting on you for future care. Thanks in advance. David smiled at her and replied. Amy seemed to be studying David with a thoughtful expression. Maybe seeing my confusion, she stood up with a smile. I've looked after many patients like your husband before. So, if you ever need advice, I'm here for you. I think I can help, Amy offered. Yeah, I'll definitely count on you. Thanks, Amy. We waved goodbye. After that, I bumped into Amy several times. Like when I went to pick up David's medicine or when his health worsened. Each time, Amy looked at me with worry, but I pretended not to notice and shrugged it off. A few months after reconnecting with Amy, David and I went to the hospital together. Just as David was called in for his examination, I heard someone call my name. When I turned around, there was Amy, looking serious. Amy, is everything okay? David just went in for his exam. Can we talk for a moment? Yeah, sure, Amy replied, leading me to a counseling room. Nancy, how are you managing with David? And are you worried about me? Thanks, I began, discussing David's recent health and how the constant caregiving was affecting me physically. Amy listened closely, and I thought she was simply concerned about my well-being. But then she said something unexpected. Actually, Nancy. What she told me next was hard to believe. About a week before we met again, Amy started, recounting a shopping trip where she saw Anne with a man she recognized. Anne's face was familiar as my sister, but Amy also thought she recognized the man. When Amy approached and Anne introduced him as her boyfriend, it wasn't until we met again at the hospital that I realized it was David, your husband. It all seemed so confusing. That's really surprising. No wonder you seemed puzzled at the time, I remarked. Amy explained that she had seen Anne and David together in town a week before we crossed paths again. However, David didn't seem to notice Amy's presence at all. I looked quite different then. I had long hair and wore glasses. That might explain why he didn't recognize me, but still. Also, there's something else bothering me, Amy continued. She noticed that David's behavior at the hospital didn't match someone with dementia. It felt unnatural, almost like someone pretending to have dementia. The man I saw in town was walking confidently, speaking clearly. He seemed perfectly healthy. Could there have been a mix-up? Maybe you mistook him for someone else? I don't think so. You know, David has those distinct moles under his right eye, right? The man with Anne had them too. It's kind of a distinctive feature for a guy. I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk about your husband like that. Amy apologized, realizing her comment might have been inappropriate. But it's true, David does have those moles. It's not common to find someone else with the same face and moles in the same spot. So could it be that David has been pretending to have dementia for 10 years and is having an affair with Anne? It was a shocking idea, but Amy seemed sincere. Honestly, I don't think this hospital is very good, Amy confessed. The doctors here aren't great, and I've heard some bad rumors too. Doesn't it seem odd that they have so many patients? So, I really think you should get David properly checked to see if he really has dementia, Amy said, looking serious. Amy's words struck me deeply. I went to a big store and bought a home security camera. I placed it in hidden spots in the living room and bedroom to secretly record what was happening while I was at work. I set it up to watch on my smartphone and checked in during breaks. To my surprise, David's behavior on camera was different from what he showed me. He didn't seem confused or lost. He was living quite normally. Plus, when Miss Johnson, who had asked to care for David, arrived, there was no sign of her taking care of him. I also discovered that Anne had been visiting my house frequently while I was away. Their conversations were clearly recorded on the footage. You're not getting caught pretending to have dementia, right, David? Anne asked. Yeah, pretending not to know the date or where things are is working perfectly, just like Anne suggested. Acting like I can't write or go outside, and mixing up day and night, seems to be fooling Nancy. She's trusting, so she won't suspect a thing. And as for Miss Johnson, she's fine. She's a single mom and needs the money. I've been paying her more, and she's staying quiet, David explained. They laughed together, flirted, and then went to the bedroom. I was stunned when I saw the footage. I couldn't believe my own sister and husband were scheming behind my back. But the proof was right there on the camera. I felt lost, confronted with the undeniable truth. A few days later, I felt the need to speak with Miss Johnson, who had been looking after David. When I reached out to her, she said she could meet the following Saturday. I went to her apartment and showed her the footage. She looked defeated and apologized tearfully, admitting, "What you see in this footage is the truth. I've been lying to you all this time, and I'm truly sorry. I don't have a license, and I was struggling to find another job. Anne offered me a job with good pay, so I went along with her plan." Despite her need for money, Miss Johnson felt guilty for assisting Anne in deceiving someone. Because of her guilt, I was able to obtain her testimony. She also gave me copies of receipts, daily reports, and her diary from that time. No matter how desperate I was for money, what I did was wrong as a human being. I'm deeply sorry, she repeated her apologies. With Miss Johnson's evidence and testimony, I decided to gather more proof. After speaking with a few other involved parties and hearing their accounts, I consulted my lawyer and chose to confront David and Anne at the place where they were having their affair. On a typical weekday, I pretended to leave for work as usual and waited near my house. When Anne arrived, and it seemed like the right moment, likely when they were occupied with each other, I returned home and caught them in the act. They panicked, unable to escape, and I spoke coldly. "I know everything now, David." David's expression shifted from surprise to guilt as he looked at me. "I heard you lost interest in your job," Cap pushed aside, "and began to dislike your work. A colleague told me. You were telling your coworkers, there's nothing left for me here. Nancy is earning well. I want to quit and live a relaxed life." Seeing my composed demeanor, David started confessing hastily. "It wasn't my idea, it was Anne who tempted me. She suggested we pretend to have dementia, and you take care of us while you're at work. We could meet as much as we wanted. Even Miss Johnson was hired by Anne to create an alibi." His words seemed to shift the blame onto Anne, portraying himself as a victim. But Anne's reaction was explosive. "What on earth? David was just as involved in the plan, and now he's trying to dodge responsibility. That's cowardly." "Shut up. You're the one who pushed me into this." "I just went along with it," David fired back. My heart grew colder as they argued, completely exposed. I couldn't bear to witness this any longer. "That's it, both of you get out." I decided to take drastic action. I threw them out of the living room window, along with their scattered clothes from Anne's purse, then shut the window. Despite their banging and pleas for explanation, I closed the curtains and ignored them. When they wouldn't stop, I sent a firm message on WhatsApp. Be quiet. If you don't leave now, I'll call the cops. Suddenly, they fell silent. Their constant visits and messages on WhatsApp grated on my nerves in the following days. So, I sold the house and moved to a weekly rental apartment. When David was diagnosed with dementia, I had changed the house title to my name. David, now retired, couldn't pay the mortgage anymore, and I made the change beforehand to avoid complications with decision-making authority in his condition. Selling the house unexpectedly fetched a good price, allowing me to buy an apartment with the saved money. Though I hadn't anticipated this situation, past Nancy had done well. I filed for divorce from David and claimed a fair share of assets. It wasn't about whether he could pay or not. It was a statement of "you did this to me. I'll never forgive or forget it." After divorcing me, David remarried and now lives in Anne's house. However, it seems their relationship isn't going well. My assumption is that they were swept up in the excitement of their affair. But once they got married, reality hit them. They can no longer just be lovers living together. They have to face the ups and downs of married life, and it must be tough for them. Even if they consider breaking up, both of their parents have passed away, and the house we used to live in has been sold. They have no family to rely on and nowhere to escape, so they're left to deal with everything on their own. Frankly, I couldn't care less. I believe they got what they deserved. Thanks to Miss Johnson's revelation, Anne's facility lost its license and was shut down. It turns out the facility wasn't making enough money to repay the loans they took out when they opened, so Anne now has a lot of debt. It seems like a fitting punishment for a sister who stole her own sister's husband. As for the quack doctor who gave the fake diagnosis, he faced consequences too. After the incident, his staff, including Amy, quit one by one, making it impossible to keep his clinic open. It turns out he was issuing false medical reports for profit, just like he did for David, and this led to his downfall. Learning the truth shocked me. I realized how outrageous some doctors can be. But I also had to admit my own fault. I was too trusting. I took my sister's word and the quack doctor's claims without questioning them. According to Amy, I'm too kind and trusting. I don't like to doubt people. But now, I'm reflecting on that. I realize I need to be more skeptical and think for myself. Amy seems to have found a new job at a large general hospital in the neighboring town, and she's doing really well there. Her experience from working in a New York hospital is highly valued, and she's already earned the trust of her colleagues. She seems to be enjoying her work a lot. On Amy's recommendation, Miss Johnson also started working at the hospital cafeteria, which is great news. Amy's eyes light up whenever she sees my puppy playing with a ball. I brought him home about a month ago, and he's become my precious companion, comforting me after long days at work. Since I got him, Amy has been visiting my apartment more often. She claims it's because he's so cute. But I know she's also worried about me, even if she won't admit it. Even though I've lost my husband, I'm grateful to spend this wonderful time with my best friend. Being single and enjoying the company of another woman doesn't sound so bad after all.